in the webinar here, I'm basically going to go over the instrument itself, because as far as I know, none of you have taken it. Is that right?
No.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So I'll give you a brief walkthrough about what it is. And if you decide to do the certification training, you can take it. It won't cost anything. It's part of the training. But I'll give you an overview, a little bit about me, and then how the certification works and what the value is of all that. If you have questions along the way, in the chat, you're familiar with the little chat on the right? I put in a link in there, and as time goes on, if you have questions, you can put those in there and we'll kind of answer those as best we can. So since I assume you know not much about me, just a very brief overview. And I have a master's in education and a PhD in psychology. I was a licensed clinical psychologist, practiced for about 30 years in a variety of places. I was in Beverly Hills when I started, and then I actually had a spiritual kind of awakening. I was working with terminally ill kids and spent time with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and in a week-long training with her in Hawaii, had all these spiritual experiences. So that changed my life quite a bit. So I ended up moving about 2 years later up to Northern California, up to Nevada City, and then I was in Sacramento. So I had private practices in those various places. As the insurance industry grew, it pretty much killed private practice as a psychologist. I practiced in the golden ages of psychology. People had insurance, they could come as much as they would want, and the person and I could make decisions about the best treatment and what they needed. Managed care took all that and turned it upside down and basically said, you can see someone for so many times and this is what we'll pay you. And when we decide, they're done. So I left the mental health world and got into executive coaching, organizational development, and kind of changed my skill base from psychotherapy, dealing with more mental health kinds of issues. And I was trained for kids and adults and started working more with organizations. Same skills, just a different language and kind of frame things differently. And all along the way, I'd always been involved with Randy, right? Been involved with psychological tests, whether it was as a psychologist or as a sports psychologist. I was always athletic. As a kid, I played a lot of baseball. As an adult, I started playing golf because you didn't need a team. I could just go out and play. And I was good. I was shooting in the 70s. And I also had this background in psychology and spiritual development. So I've got all this training in meditation, consciousness, and psychology, plus I'm athletic. So the people around me are getting kind of absorbed in my vibe, and they're playing the best golf they've ever played in their life. So they're going, hey, can you teach me? Can you help me? So my marketing strategy was go out and play golf. And I'm on the golf course, I'm meeting people, and people would ask me to work with their kids because their kids were emotionally in trouble and having one bad shot, and they're having temper tantrums and all that. So I started taking on clients for golf and sports psychology. I ended up working with the UCLA women's golf team, UCLA or the UC Davis men's golf team a little bit, a lot of junior golfers. And so my coaching went into the sports world too. So I've had different lifetimes. One as a psychologist and the other kind of evolved out of that mode, more into the mode that you were trained to do with coaching, working with organizations. And I worked with some great organizations. I worked with eBay, their executive team. And it was interesting being around a bunch of billionaires who were geniuses and talking about leadership development and personal development. And we did some instrument-based coaching with them as well. And so, and I worked with different organizations. I wrote a few books. I wrote 6 books. first one got on the LA Times bestseller list. And it kind of relates to some of what we'll talk about today as well, called Sacred Healing, Integrating Spirituality with Psychotherapy. So I really looked at the spiritual aspects of our being and related it to how we could speed up our personal development as well. One of the books I'm especially proud of, there's a football coach named Coach Joe Taylor. Any of you guys know about Coach? Coach, HSBC, he's in 4 Hall of Fames, currently at Virginia Union. He called me, he read one of my books and said, I need a book, would you help me write a book? So we wrote a book called The Making of a Champion. And it's about his approach. And he really worked with individuals. He wasn't trying to make them great players, he's trying to make them great human beings. And so he got these kids to get through school, get educated, graduate, go on for advanced degrees and training. And because he was so focused on personal development and responsibility and excellence, paid off in football. He won all the time. And he's gone on to teach that system to other people as well. He's a great guy. If you ever have a chance to hear him, can't recommend him too much. So I've been on TV and I've lectured all over the place in different countries and been in private practice for over 40 years. And spiritually, I have been involved with meditation through the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. As we relate to this love factor inventory, back in the day when I was practicing as a psychologist, I always had kind of a business sense too. And I thought, well, maybe I can create a product in addition to just being a psychologist and writing books and seeing clients. So I thought, well, what could I do? I said, well, I know psychological testing. I've been trained in it. I've used it for years. And I thought, well, what could I create as a test that would help people? I thought, well, there's nothing around that I know of at that time that measures people's capacity for love. And because of my spiritual awakening, love was a bigger issue for me. My family was not the most functional family in the world. So I spent a lot of years learning my trade in psychotherapy, trying to straighten myself out. And my spiritual awakening opened up my heart and gave me a deeper connection to people in a way that psychology never did. And so I thought, well, let's take a look at love and see what I can do to measure that. So I created a test here that is scientifically valid. And I can't stress that enough. There are tests out there used in the corporate world that I saw when I was doing a lot of that work that were not very well validated, and people were good marketing people, so they sold them. But when I asked questions about, well, how do you know it measures what it measures? The people got mad at me for asking that question. So that was a clear sign that something wasn't right. So I spent 2 years doing a national research study, gave this to 2,000 people across the United States to develop norms for the results. So the test will tell you how you score in relationship to the population that I developed, and I have 2,000 people in that. When I developed this test, there's different ways to create a test. I just asked myself, so I'm in practice every day. I am asking people questions. I'm trying to help them resolve the issues that they came in with, and I'm having to make decisions about their capacity to really function. Sometimes I test people, a lot of times I wouldn't, we just talk. And so I asked myself, well, what are the things that people really struggle with or need to deal with when it comes to having loving relationships? So I came up with these particular scales, and then I spent the 2 years validating and make sure they actually measured what I wanted them to measure, and they did. We won't go in great detail into the results because it'll take a lot of time to go over the statistics. I'll show you a little bit. But basically, these are the things that I thought about when I thought, well, what does it take to be a well-functioning human being relating with other people. Compassion and brief definition here, one's ability to empathize with another person's situation based upon a fuller understanding of that person's reality. So that's without judgment. Friendship, because I've been involved with people and have seen relationships where people say, oh, I love them, but they don't treat them very well. They don't treat each other like they treat their friends better than they treat each other. So friendships seem to be a good dimension as well. So it seemed to me, in order to be able to maintain a relationship over time and not have a lot of drama, having a base of friendship was important. Intimacy seems kind of obvious, your ability to maintain a close connection with another person. Masculine feminine dimension is based on a Jungian concept about whether we have certain qualities. Feminine dimension is more about feelings and being sensitive to that realm of life. Masculine is more rational, more logical. And again, we're looking for balance in a lot of these things. Primitive self is another Jungian concept. It's about one's acceptance of their inner life. Sometimes people are afraid of what's going on in there, call it the shadow. So that in Star Wars, where Yoda sent Luke into the cave, to really kind of look at his shadow and come to terms with that. So if we're uncomfortable with what's inside of us, then it's going to impact our ability to comfortably relate to other people as well. We're going to be closed, we're going to be guarded, we'll be afraid to open up. Psychological adjustment basically is looking at, are people free from anxiety and conflicts that would get in the way of their being open, comfortable, and safe in relationships. I have a romantic love scale that actually statistically didn't show much, but I thought it was an interesting scale to leave because it looks at someone's kind of idealized fantasy about wanting to be in a relationship. Self-respect. Do you respect yourself and others? If you don't respect other people, it's really hard to have a good relationship. If you don't respect yourself, chances are you're going to get involved in relationships with people who aren't going to treat you very well. So self-respect was another important one. Sensitivity. Can you tune in to other people and sense what they're feeling? Or are you so absorbed in your own life and your own experience that you can't even kind of effectively, sensitively relate to other people? Spirituality scale, to me at that point in time, and still is, I thought that's an important ingredient in our fully integrated capacity to be a well-functioning human being. And how you define spirituality is fine by me. I'm not pushing a particular religion. I'm talking about one's relationship with spirit, where they can feel that loving, joyful presence and integrate that into every aspect of their life. Trust. Can someone feel a level of trust with not only themselves, but with other and see life as a positive, good thing? And the persona scale is an interesting one that we'll talk about a little more in more detail because it's a way to see if someone's faking and trying to create a false image that they're actually better than they are. And this might come up in a situation where you're coaching two people and they're thinking about going deeper in their relationship. Maybe they're just starting, they're dating, thinking about getting married, and someone takes a test and they want to look especially good, so they give overly positive responses. And we'll talk about what that might mean. And so in the instrument itself, and this is great for your practice, I created what I call the introspective guide, and it's on the website. We're going to go over to the website here, and it's free. I took 20 items from the test. The test has 126 items. So you get enough responses to be able to tell what's going on. I took 20, basically about 2 items from each scale, and then scored that in a way that basically get 4 points for everyone. If you get 80% or better on the scoring of this, then your skill level is probably pretty good. If you're scoring below that, then my suggestion is you might want to take the full LFI. So it could be a screening instrument. You're working with people and you're saying, I know of this instrument, might be helpful to take. Why don't you take this introspective guide and see how it is, and we'll see where you score. So they get a result, they get a little story from me, and you can take it when you want for free anytime. You can read this in more detail. And then it gives them their responses so they can remember what they said. And right in here, the percentile range, I just made this up at 0.76, which is 76%. So this is a little low in terms of my suggested level of response. So somebody would go through it and would give them a feel for the kinds of items that we're asking, like, I value my contributions to the world. This is in the self-respect scale, just because I pretty much know where they're all coming from. And so you'll be able to see that this is a pretty down-to-earth, solid kind of question, that this test is about one's personal level of development. It is not a compatibility test. Some of the compatibility tests really look at interests, and do you like doing this? Do you like doing that? And if you have a lot of interests in common, then chances are you're a good match. Because of my background in personal development that comes out of psychology as well as my spiritual practice, I really wanted to dive deeper into what are the areas of functioning that somebody has that allow them to be the best person they can be. And if you go to the website, you'll see on there, one of the little taglines is, are you ready for the love you want? And a lot of people are in the mindset of, how do I find the right person? I can never find the right person. And my thought is, well, are you the right person to be in the relationship? If that person showed up, would they want to be in a relationship with you? And so this is like a mirror to help people have a realistic assessment of their capacity to function well in everyday life. So let's go to a sample report. I'll show you what happens. Someone takes the test and they log in, they purchase it, and they're taken to a page where they fill out some brief demographic information. And if they're working with a coach, they can identify you as their coach, which will have benefits later on, which I'll show you. And they take the test, and then they get this report. This is a 28-page report that I created that looks at both psychological and spiritual perspectives on the results. So here's a sample report of a real human being who took it. And so we can see here that we have a scale score that just is the numbers added up. And then because of my sample, I know what scale scores relate to percentile scores. So like compassion here, it's in the 70th percentile. So they're in a little higher range of the general population. When I have someone take it and I look at their results, the first thing I do to try and figure out where to go, because again, the value of this kind of assessment, instrument-based coaching gives us a way to quickly look at issues and then define areas for intervention. So we can create a plan, we can create goals, and get to it. It's a much quicker way to get at issues than just talking, because a lot of times people don't know what's going on. if they really knew, they might not be looking to get help. So I look at this one, and I'm looking at the low scores. I'm looking at the high scores. I want to see what jumps out at me. So if we look here, I just kind of scroll down and 14.4 pops out. That's very low. And that's in the trust scale. Oops, keep doing that. Thing's got a mind of its own. So the 14%, so that's one of the first things I'm going to want to start asking the person about, and to see what we know about this. The next one that's a little low is up here, psychological adjustment. That's at 41%, rounded off 42, still below the average. So we've got two areas immediately that are worthy of investigation for coaching. And a lot of coaching, and I have a little bit of idea of how you were trained. We're trained as a coach to ask good questions. The better question we ask, the deeper we can go, because we want to help somebody kind of introspect and explore. So this gives us some areas where to go. And at this level, it's kind of a global look at what's happening, because we have a score and we have a scale, and we may know what's in that scale, and we know what it's supposed to mean. But at this level, we don't know yet how the person responded to the 10 or 11 items on that scale to give them this result. And the biggest bonus of being a certified coach, aside from the fact that you're going to know what you're doing with this instrument and you'll get a discount, your access to the items in each scale and how they responded gives you a ton of information and will enhance your ability to coach any of your people. And it will deepen it, and it'll help your income, because you can now make a plan to say, well, we've got these issues to deal with. Realistically, this isn't going to happen in a 2-minute conversation. Why don't I plan maybe 4, 6 sessions, whatever? You can get people to prepay for that. You can even make a package and say, well, if you book 4 sessions as a package, I'll give you a discount in the fee. So you're now booking multiple sessions instead of an individual session. So as a marketing strategy, it's a good way to enhance your coaching practice as well. So we looked and we see, and we're going to explore trust and psychological adjustment. Now I'm curious about, well, what are the high scores on here? The persona scale that I mentioned, which we will look at in more detail in a moment, is pretty much off the chart, super high. And I'll explain more about this scale in a moment. It's very fascinating, and it's got a ton of information that will take your coaching with this person to a level that probably wouldn't happen without this particular scale. The next one that's pretty high up here is intimacy. So I'm looking at this and I'm creating hypotheses, right? I've got a person, I don't know them very well yet. We're maybe just started the coaching, and they agreed to take this in the beginning, which is a great thing. It's very helpful. It'll speed up what we're doing. And so I'm thinking to myself, this person, she's divorced. I know that because she told me, 2 years divorced. Her trust is very, very low. So I'm wondering, so is she so non-trusting because she got so hurt and damaged in her marriage, and that's why she left it? And so now she has kind of her heart guarded, and she's very cautious about how she's relating. I know she wants to get into another relationship, but probably trust is going to be an issue. As she goes to meet a new person, how open will she allow herself to be? How much is she willing to engage another person? Because we know the trust is down. And also, And this comes out of my psychological background of doing intensive psychotherapy, but it also relates to any relationship, and it relates to a coaching relationship. My take on coaching is that it's fair game to look at how that person relates to you, because you can learn something from that. How they treat you is probably how they treat other people as well. So if a person has an issue about trust and they're saying, well, I want to be more trusting, I realize I have problems here, I want to be in another relationship. And in the course of your work with that person, they begin to tell you that, I really don't trust you. I'm not sure I even want to tell you this. Or I think you're just trying to take advantage of me. You're just trying to see me as many times as you can and make as much money off me as you can, whatever. And I mean, this is a conversation I currently have with one of my clients. She doesn't trust anybody. And she's healthy enough to be able to own it and say, well, I realize I don't trust anybody. I was treated very poorly by my father. And so I've got these issues, but you need to know that I'm usually angry with you and I don't trust you. And yet she continues to come to sessions. We continue to talk about it, and we continue to deal with that issue in her relationships with other people. And as she improves in her ability to trust me, she's going to improve in everyday life too. So I'm on the lookout for trust because I know it's an issue. So I may not bring it up initially because you want people to lead the way as much as they can. But I might say in the beginning that we know that you have trust issues, and we're going to make a plan and we're going to work on that because you're in a new relationship and you still got issues with your parents, and we'll see if we can straighten some of those things out and help you make a better plan for the way you engage people, whether it's your intimate relationships. This also relates to the business world. If you do business coaching, we'll get into that in a bit. It also relates to how they treat their people in business. And then I might say, and by the way, if it ever comes up, and I know it will, but if it ever comes up that you start to have issues of trust with me, let me know. Let's talk about it so it doesn't get in the way of our working relationship. Is that okay? And they'll always say yes. I go, sure. I go, great. So, and then I let it go. And then over time, it may surface and we may see it. So I'm looking up at the next level, psychological adjustment. And again, I'm just making guesses here and coming up with theories that, because of my background training, they're usually right, but not always. We don't want to be so arrogant that we think we always know what's going on, because we don't. But it's okay to come up with these working hypotheses that we're going to test out. So psychological adjustment is kind of on the low side. Now, as you'll see, that the items in that scale, look at, how comfortable are you in everyday life? Do you run with a lot of anxiety and fear, apprehension? So something's saying here that this woman, not only is she low in trust, kind of relates to psychological adjustment too. She's got more fear than is ideal to be able to relate to people in an intimate relationship, develop new relationships, and relate with others. So these are my thoughts, and we'll explore that and find out more when I get to speak with her. Intimacy is good. It's up there, 90 percentile. So here's someone that when she does get close, it may be an issue of what it takes for her to get close, but when she does get close, she's comfortable. She likes the connection. She feels nurtured by it. She doesn't run away from it. So that's a strength. And we always want to be able to look at people's strengths and support those strengths and encourage them. So we know right away that that is a strength with her that we're going to keep on the lookout for and keep confirming that any chance we get, because we want people to feel good about themselves. Her self-respect scale is 54%. It's not terrible, but I would like to see it higher. And so anything we can do as a coach to kind of mirror back the good things that people are doing, then there's an opportunity for that. And so intimacy leads the way for that. So the persona scale is interesting. I mentioned that the scale measures if someone's trying to fake it. And over the course of years, I developed this test 30 years ago. I marketed it to psychologists mostly in those days, and this was before the internet. People were buying floppy disks and installing it on their computer and giving it to their clients in their office on the computer. And I think I had about 50 people 30 years ago, professionals using it in their practice on an ongoing basis. And so over the course of years, I got to see a lot of profiles, a lot of responses, and I learned that there is a whole deeper level to this persona scale. It's not just people trying to fake it good, because I would talk to people and they say, no, I was honest. And actually their scores tended to be higher too. All their scale scores were pretty high. And as I got to know the people, they were well-functioning, high-functioning people. They're doing pretty well in life. And as I talk to them more, and we'll get into the scale, we'll see the items, and we'll see the revelations that come out of that. So let's move on here without further ado to, before we do that, I mentioned there's two levels in this. There's a psychological level and there's a spiritual level. When I redid this, I republished this, it's only republished in the last few months, because I used it for 30 years ago. It was out and then it went out of publication for technical reasons. And then I recreated it recently because the internet has evolved and it was pretty easy to bring it back to life. I looked at it again, and at this point, being a little, I guess, older and more comfortable speaking up for spirituality, back in the days, back then in the psychological world, that was not a big selling point. I had it in there. Whoop, looks like Anita just showed up a little late, but better late than never. So back in the day, I was focusing more on the psychological interpersonal aspect of the test, even though it had the spirituality scale. When I was looking at it now, again, with new eyes, I thought these particular scales, compassion, friendship, psychological adjustment, masculine, feminine, sensitivity, spirituality, and trust, these relate to how integrated one's spiritual life is. There's a saying that I love. The saying is, your spirituality is tested in the true light of day. I have met a lot of people who say, oh, I'm very spiritual. You know, I meditate when I'm in the shower. Or, you know, I believe in this, I believe in that. But you hang out with them and they're not nice people. I mean, they're unkind, they're judgmental, they're controlling. And I began to think, how are they even defining spirituality? It's not my definition of what it is to be spiritual, right? And so if we look at real everyday life, and let's go to the page here, go back to the website. So these are the various scales I mentioned. So let's just take compassion. Again, because of time, we're not going to go through every one. In the training, we will. But just as an overview, compassion is an important quality to have if you're going to be in a relationship, because people want to feel like you actually care about them and that you have some empathy and some regard for them. Otherwise, you're probably not going to stick around. At a spiritual level, every tradition has something to say about compassion. Christianity and the Bible. I mean, there's a bunch of quotes here. Here's a couple. We'll just read one. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. Now, I'm not trying to sell any particular religion, even though my own spiritual awakening, to my surprise, it was very deeply involved with Jesus. I was brought up Jewish, but I'm having these experiences with Jesus, and I'm feeling a kind of love that I never felt in my whole life. And so if we look at the teachings of Jesus in Christianity, compassion is an aspect of that. So if someone says, oh, I'm a very spiritual person, yet they don't treat people with any level of compassion, I think it's fair game to begin to explore with that person. Well, let's help me try to understand what you mean by your spiritual. And say, and by the way, you did score high in your spirituality scale, but your compassion scale is pretty low. What do you think is going on here? So again, we're not telling them what's going on. We're asking them. We're using a coaching model to open up an area, but you've got some real data behind you to give you more kind of credibility to say, well, it looks like this is an important area that's worthwhile for us to explore. Are you interested in that? If someone looks at their results and sees that their score is pretty low, if they say no, then they're not very coachable, right? People have to want to change in order to change. And so this is a way to invite people in, get them to buy in and create a working relationship to where they're aligned with you to help them, right? And so compassion becomes one of the scales on that. And I just got quotes from other areas. And basically, all I'm trying to do is build a case for why compassion relates to your level of spiritual integration. And so we've got two levels of discussion. And you can see how the test and the results can open the door to having some time to talk to somebody. It kind of legitimizes the thought that, well, it may take more than one session to resolve this, because realistically, it will. And so you can get somebody to say, okay, fine, I'm willing to commit to a few more times so we can explore these things. So,
Dr. Mann, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
What about people who are not spiritual? How do you engage them with the spirituality?
Perfect question. I'm not in the business of trying to impose my values on anybody, right? They work for me, and they work for other people too. But if somebody is not interested in spirituality, it's clearly their choice. Let's say their spirituality is low, and their other scales probably are going to be lower too, my guess, because there is a relationship. If you're spiritually aware, you have more love in your heart. And if you've been touched by spirit in some way, you're more compassionate. You hopefully understand the value of forgiveness, and you're more connected. So probably some of their other scales are going to be lower. I will, in my coaching with someone, suggest that if you're interested in one, especially if their psychological adjustment scale is lower, it means they're carrying a lot of fear and anxiety, that you might want to consider learning how to meditate. Now, I'm not selling God, I'm selling a method to help them get peace of mind, to become calmer, and to open their heart. Whether or not they want to believe in God, if they have those experience where they're more loving, they're more peaceful, they're quieter, they're able to be living in the present more, call it what you want, I think that's a plus for that human being. And so I would offer kind of the spiritual technology, and that's part of the training. I have an expertise in spiritual development. I've written a best-selling book on it. I've taught this stuff all over the world. That in the training, if you're interested, I'm happy to share with you, ways to integrate spiritual methods and techniques in the coaching process, so you can teach people these kinds of things. And so, off the top of my head, Laurel, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And does that sound like something you could integrate into your coaching practice?
I don't have a problem with it. I think the only thing that came up with me is just the spirituality. Sometimes when people just see the word, it sort of turns them off. The people that I deal with, I do speak with spirituality, higher power. I'm a Reiki practitioner, um, and so I integrate my words into my practice as a Reiki practitioner as well.
Oh, that's great. My book, Sacred Healing, I didn't mention this, but part of my spiritual awakening is that as my consciousness opened up, I had the direct experience of being more clairvoyant and also working on the subtle realms. I became a healer kind of
Mhm.
instantly because my consciousness was awakened. And I talk a lot about the power of consciousness to change versus working through the mind or working through emotions, because you lay your hands on somebody, you don't even have to touch them, you're over their body, right?
Yes.
And you're channeling energy to that person. My experience is that as their energy changes, the vibration changes, it filters down, changes physical body, changes mental body, changes the emotional body. It's a profound way to help people change very quickly. I used to have people come to me and I would ask them, because people knew that I did this energy healing stuff, and yet I was still a psychologist. And I said, "Are you coming for psychotherapy? Or are you looking for the one-shot miracle cure?" And they're going, "I'm looking for the miracle cure." So, we would use a different approach. And I saw a lot of miracles through that. I saw people with serious diseases, just, it went away. So I think that's great that you've got that training and you can integrate that into your practice. People will benefit a lot from that. So, and again, if people start, complaining about, spirituality, a lot of times they're confusing it with religion. I make the point, so I'm not talking about religion. I don't really care what you believe. People can believe whatever they want. And quite frankly, our belief systems seem to do more to separate us and bring us together. I'm talking about whatever you want to call it, a direct experience of feeling a level of peace and love and joy in your life. And to me, that's what a spiritual reality is all about. That usually gets past the conversation. And if they're not interested, then that's fine. I mean, our job is to work with the people and help them with what they want. Now, it's quite possible that in the course of a coaching relationship, they will begin to go on. Now, I see that we're moving through a lot, and there's a lot of content to remain. Can you stick around for more than an hour, or should I try and reframe this so we're done sooner?
I'm
How are we
okay.
doing? Robert, you okay? Yeah? Right, Randy? You okay for going a little
Yes.
longer? Okay, good.
Yeah, I got
Good.
to
Good.
read.
All right, great. Because the information is pretty interesting. Okay, so that's the spiritual part of it for the moment. And there's a lot more that we could say about that, which we will in the training. But here is the cream of the crop for this instrument. It's what I call the the items by scale. So once you're enrolled as a certified coach, there's a link here that only this whole professional link thing only shows up if you're a certified coach. When you log in, it'll access this. You click on this and it brings up this window, and all the people who you're coaching with who've taken it will show up in this page here. Now you just click on view details. And this is a sample report that we looked at before. And so what this does here is you can see it shows the scale, and then it shows all the items in that scale, and it shows their answers. So here's where we drop deeper into our conversation with people. This is the greatest part of this test. As a side note, one of the testimonials is from a master certified coach. This woman took the test with her boyfriend. She took it, and initially all she got was the generic results, and she scored very low on a particular scale. She says, "This can't be right. What's wrong with this test? There's no way this is any good." And I said, "Well, why don't we take a deeper look at it?" So she starts from a point, and again, she's a master certified coach, thinking this is a piece of junk. We go in and we start looking at her responses, and she goes, "Oh my God, I actually didn't mean to say that, because I was thinking this and it's really this." And we went through every item that she responded to. Either she changed it because she was thinking differently, or she did say that, but she could see why that would create a problem. So by the end of the whole thing, she wrote me a testimonial because of the ability to dive deeper into this and go through it. And so in the interest of time, I'm going to jump down here. We'll do two things quickly. Trust scale. We saw the trust scale was low, right? And I have a little video I'm going to show you. This woman actually calls herself a influencer. And so she did a live Facebook interview with me. And she took the test, and she was willing to go through it, to all of her people, right? Her peeps. And so she went through it, and her trust scale was really low. And I said, "Well, let's see what's going on with this." She says, "Well, I don't understand it. I think I'm a pretty trusting person." I said, "Well, your responses weren't so great. Let's take a look at it." So first one, I do not trust women. Moderately agree. So the only step up is absolutely agree. Moderately agree is not the greatest stuff. So I said, "Well, you say you're trusting, but women are half the population of the world, right? You don't trust women." And she goes, then she starts laughing. "Well, it's true." And she starts explaining, why that's true, why she doesn't trust women. So then I said, "Well, let's look at the next one. I don't trust men." Absolutely agree. So now we've got all of humanity. You got issues with men and women everywhere. So now she go, "Well, and she starts explaining again what's going on. I mean, just like that, we got into a very honest, open discussion about her capacity and willingness to trust people and why she doesn't. So, and we could go on more, but in the interest of time, I'll leave it at that. But that, who knows how long it would have taken to get to that kind of discussion on an issue that's so relevant to her relationship skills. The persona scale has become a scale that I love dearly. I mentioned that it's looking to measure whether people are faking it one way or the other. The items on this scale have particular wording. It says, "I am always honest. I never hurt those. I'm always this. I'm always that. I'm never this." Generally, we're not always or never. We're kind of more in between. So if someone's trying to make themselves look overly good, they're going to say, "Oh yes, I'm always honest. I'm never mean. I never lie." La, da, da, da. Well, as I talk to people, some of them, I would get my friends to take this because I'm always trying to understand the test better. So I get people to take it who I knew, so I could look at their results. I already knew them really well. We look at there's a friend of mine, longtime friend in the business world, got a stable, very good relationship for years and years and years. He scored in the 98th percentile on this. He also, so the first thing I'm thinking is, well, he wasn't faking it. I mean, and I know him to be a very conscious, loving guy. And it turns out that, well, it's true, he's always trying, to be thoughtful, kind, honest. never anything harsh or mean. And it turns out that he feels totally taken advantage of by other people because he's not setting limits, he's not setting boundaries, and he's not taking care of himself. And it uncovered a huge issue in his business life that he was giving away. He was in real estate. He was giving away so much information and what he knew about corporate real estate stuff that people wouldn't need to hire him because he already gave it to him out of the kindness of his heart. And so we started talking about how he could protect himself and not put himself in jeopardy. And oftentimes, if someone scores really high on this scale and turns out that they're being honest, you can very quickly go into, and there's items in it that said, you know, I feel like I'm always hurt by, or often hurt by those closest to me. And they go, absolutely, I am. So we really talk about what is your style and what are you doing to keep yourself safe? Or are you just opening yourself up to be hurt? So I love this scale, and it's got a depth of psychological fruit that we can use in helping people make plans. You know, we're all about setting goals and making a plan and getting people to do that. Well, maybe they need to learn, you know, how to be able to set limits, how to say no, and we can have good conversations about that and track that through time and see how people are doing. So if we go
Ron,
back here, yes.
2 quick questions. Do you find that when you're going through those different areas, that it takes one session to deal with one area, or in a 60-minute session, do you do multiple areas or multiple scale areas?
Well, that's a good question. I like that, Robert. I think my style would be in the first session, I'm going to go over the results, kind of like what we're doing. So say, let's look at everything. You scored low here, you scored high here, you know, you got strengths here. This looks like areas that you need improvement. And I'm going to ask them, say, do you see how this relates to your life? And by this time, we might be in the individual items. I will then, first of all, we need to make a treatment plan, so to speak, a coaching plan to say, okay, what do you want to work on, and create some priorities. So I might say, well, let's start with trust. I mentioned that I have this one woman that I'm coaching. We talk about trust every time we have a session because it always comes back to that. These are not issues that are always resolved in a session. You know, if people are healthier and they're less stuck, they've been less traumatized in life, then it's much easier for them to change. A lot of times what they need is information, they need insight, and perhaps some coaching and some ideas on, you know, how to do this. And a lot of times people come up with their own stuff, you know, we ask them. So generally, I would think that it's going to be more than one time conversation. If somebody's coming, most people, if they turn to a coach, it's because they've got real reasons. It's usually not a one-time kind of conversation, although it can be. So the kind of the information, the feedback that people give you will pretty much tell you whether you need to have multiple sessions. I think it's always safe, even if it looks like, well, this is a one-time thing, assuming that the finances aren't an issue. You can say, well, why don't we at least check in one more time, a week or two, and see how things are going. So you can help keep people on track and help them stay accountable to say, well, what have you done? How did it go? And you'll find out pretty quickly whether there's a need to continue. Or sometimes they may just call you and say, hey, this happened this week and I really need to talk to you because I feel really bad and I don't know what to do about all this. Does that help, Robert?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. So we looked at the items by scale. Here, I want to show you a video. This is a fun video. This is my discussion with this woman on how she responded. We'll just do the trust scale. Okay. If you can't hear it, trust scale was your lowest scale.
I thought I trusted, but I'm getting smart in my old age.
But, you know, people often say, oh, the test is wrong, you know, that's not true. But I didn't answer the test for you or for anybody else.
Actually, I do agree. I don't trust. I would agree with that.
Because let's look at some of your answers.
Okay.
All right. So, I do not trust women. Absolutely agree.
I do not trust women.
So, I mean, yeah, I can say, oh, I'm very trusting, but do you trust people? No. And women are
I love that you pulled that up. Okay, well, I mean, you know what? I think women can be so jealous and mean. So yeah, I have found over my journey here that most women will freaking stab you in the back to get what they want.
That's true. And years ago when I was getting my PhD, I did some research and it was on sex bias in therapy. And one of the things I found was that women were tougher on women.
Yes. Yes.
Much tougher.
Well, don't you know that women dress for women? Women don't dress for men. We don't care what you think. We're worried about what that girl next to me is going to be like. Do you see her butt that dress? Okay.
Well, good to know. Okay, so here's another one. I do not trust men. Absolutely agree. So there's another half.
I'm so glad we get to go back through this. I can't remember. That makes me laugh. But okay, yeah. Yes. Especially you go dating. Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm done trusting any man. You are guilty until otherwise proven not guilty.
Okay. So that's a good example of how, you know, just going into the items by scale can quickly open up a conversation. Now, I'm doing a Facebook thing, so I didn't really pursue any of that. But it was a beginning. If we're doing a coaching thing, more would have come out of that. The first one I was just showing you the difference between men and women. That if you look at the scores here, women generally over here score higher than the men, and it's statistically significant. That's almost all of the scales. Personal development, if people have done some kind of personal development, which speaks to the value of coaching, right? People can change. They score better. They have higher scores on almost all the scales. Marital status. This is interesting because I was able, out of the 2,000 people, I was able to find out who they were. Some were married, some were single, some were living with someone, some were divorced. You know, married people generally scored higher, especially than single people on almost all the scales. So I throw this in just to kind of give a little validity to the statistical part of this, because I'm happy that it's really there. I'm just going to do a couple things here. As a coach, we generally don't see these kind of people. And if they turn out to be this kind, we refer them. But because I was a psychologist when I did this, I got some very interesting profiles. And sometimes looking at more extreme cases is interesting. This is actually a woman with a dissociative personality disorder. Right? So I think the interesting thing about this is just shows the power of the test. So you really have two different kind of people, right? Coming in. Primary personality is the one who came in asking for treatment. The secondary personality was pretty angry, pretty hard, pretty controlling, not too good in relationships. But this woman had been molested by a family member. And so the secondary personality was in some ways kind of stronger. Primary one was kinder, nicer, but she carried a lot of the damage and the hurt. And you can see that there are differences in a lot of these, especially the primitive self, which is the shadow material. How comfortable are you with what's hiding kind of or hidden within you? The secondary one was pretty comfortable because she was one in there that was causing problems when there were problems. The primary one was very uncomfortable with what was inside of her. And that's why there was this split, this dissociative thing. So if we look at a married couple, this is more likely if we do couples coaching. Here are people, you can see the wife is this one, the husband is in the all darker. And you can see that there are differences. Friendship, I'm just thinking coaching their relationship, their friendship scores are not very good. So I imagine they're not real nice to each other. I knew these people this 30 years ago, so I have no memory of who this couple really was. But I'm looking at it now, and again, what pops out to mind, friendship is low. So are these people treating each other, very well? Probably not. Their intimacy scores, the wife, at least up to the 50, guys, not so much. So they're probably not feeling very nurtured and happy with the kind of connection they have. Psychological adjustment, the guys got more anxiety and fear running than the wife. The wife is looking like the healthier person in this relationship. Here's some testimonial stuff, but maybe in the interest of time, I'm not going to get, this is the woman, the master certified coach. The love factor inventory is a powerful and enlightening experience for anyone who wants to learn more about themselves and improve the quality of their significant relationships. The report alone reveals a depth of information useful for conversation starters. It is ideal, though, to explore your results with the guidance of a coach who will guide you towards greater understanding and self-awareness. So here's the power in it for a coaching practice. And this is from someone who's a master certified coach. I mean, she saw it because she experienced it. So let's look at the certification. What is it and what are the benefits? One, it gives you credibility because you're going to be trained. You're going to know this well, more than anybody who just says, hey, I know this test is great. I'm doing coaching, take it and we'll talk about it. You're going to be able to go to a much deeper level, especially because you will have access to those items by scale. Unless you're certified, I'm not giving away that information because I want someone that I know knows what they're doing before we unleash that level of power really in a coaching relationship. So the training gives you intensive training. It's going to go for at least 4 hours. It kind of depends upon how many questions people have. I'm going to interpret individually everybody's profile. So partly it's a way to teach how to interpret it, but it also gives you information. So again, I think it's going to be at least 4 hours, but if we need more time, I'm happy to do it. And there's no change in the price. And you get exclusive benefits in that. One, you get trained by me. Since I created it, I assume I understand it a little better than somebody down the line who may be certified to train other people. You get to start at the source. So I think that's pretty good. You're going to understand the concepts. You're going to have exclusive access to these items by scale. We'll go into the research behind it. I want you to feel comfortable that this is valid because people will always say, this test can't be right, right? If you don't trust the test, you might think, well, maybe they're right. Maybe the test is no good. So I want you to feel confident that the test actually measures what it measures. So we'll talk about that. And the test can be used in a variety of ways. It can be used for an individual. It can also be used as couples. In the corporate world, there's something called a 360 assessment. Anybody familiar with that? Is that one? I love the 360 assessment. What it is that it's a test that looks at you in relationship to either certain kind of business skills or the culture, and you take it, and then you invite other people to take it and rate you. So that's why they call it 360. It's all around. So you've got people telling you how they perceive you. You've got your own delusion about who you think you are, and then you've got people's perception. And it usually changes depending upon what's the relationship. You know, your boss may see you differently than up here because you act differently with different people. So there's a power that opens up a whole avenue for coaching as well, because they realize they need to change the way they are with certain groups. There's a couples package where somebody can take it. You and I are in a relationship. I take it and rate myself. You take it and rate yourself. Then I take it and I rate how I perceive you, and you take it and how you perceive me. So now we can begin to see the gap between self-perceptions and other perceptions, and just sharing those results opens up a deeper conversation because you're sharing it with the couple. You know, each is hearing and seeing how the other person scored. And by this time, they've already looked at their results and talked about it in that beginning phase. And now we go deeper. So that's a powerful way. Because you're part of Barbara's network, you're going to get a 50% discount off the price for any of your clients who want to take this. And because you're certified, on the website, there is a kind of referral network. I'll have a place there where you will have a listing. So if someone takes it and they don't have a coach and they want to talk to somebody, they can click on this page and they can see all the people listed, and they can choose, and you know, they might choose you to help them. So there's a potential referral base in that network. So it also offers you a specialty area in your coaching practice. So you can market this if you want as having a specialization, working with relationships and love capacity, whether you want to talk about it from just the psychological relationship part, or whether you want to talk about it from a spiritual dimension as well. And like I said, you know, we'll go through everybody's results with that. So in order to sign up for this, I want to make sure that I have a relationship with the people that I am certifying. So there's a couple steps. The first step, doesn't cost anything, is fill out this form to request an individual meeting to talk about basically your coaching practice, how you're trained. I know you're trained by Barbara. What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? I want to give you a chance to get to know me more. I want to get to know you better so we have a good, solid relationship, because hopefully over time, we're going to keep in touch. And I'm going to do whatever I can to help you. So I really want to know what you need so I can support you. So the first step is, let's just talk 20 minutes, to have a little Zoom call and get to know each other better. And then from there, there is a page. I put it in the chat section, this link. This link takes you to an enrollment page on the website. So once you're kind of go through the process of our conversation, I will send you a link to sign up for the training. So that link will be on the website. And the normal cost for this is $397. But I want to make this as accessible as possible for you to take it. So basically, this is what the page looks like. You would click here, the professional certification, you'd check out, and you would then sign up. But I'm going to make it so you don't have to pay anything for this. So it's going to cost you some time because we're going to work together. So you have the skill level that you need to do it. But we're going to make it so it costs you nothing. And the way we're going to do this is when you become certified, I'm going to give you a couple coupon codes. One will be good for that 50% discount for people to use. The other one is going to have 4 uses on it for individual uses. The normal fee for this is $100. This coupon is worth $400 because it's got 4 uses on it. So instead of someone going to the site and paying, you're going to give them this code and it's going to take away the cost. So it won't cost them anything. So when they go to check out, it's going to say 0 and they'll have access to take the test. You charge them as part of your fee, so that this is what it costs to take the test. They're going to give you that $100. It's not going to go to the Love Factor inventory. The first 4 people who take the test, you get all of your money back for the coaching fee. So I think that's a pretty good idea. I'm open to feedback. Randy, Laura, Kanita, if you want to unmute yourself and say something. What do you think about this?
I think it's good.
Good, because I want you to. If you don't, then we got to work out something else. Because I want you to feel like there's really no risk. I don't want this to be any financial risk to you. And if you have any kind of coaching practice, it's not going to be hard to get 4 people to take this. You will get your money back. At the end, you get a certificate that colorful of completion. So you can put that on your website or wherever you want for that. And we've gone through a lot of questions. If you have more questions, I'm open to that. Are there anything that you didn't ask that you'd like to ask?
I probably missed it. How long's the training?
Well, I'm thinking, again, it depends upon how many questions, how many people are in the training, all that. I think it's going to be 4 hours.
Okay,
It's possible it might go for a little bit more, but we're going to need some time to go through it. Plus, I'm going to do a one-on-one interpretation of everybody's LFI as a way to kind of give life hands-on experience of how do you interpret this? What's the process? And so we can learn from each other by going through that. And if it takes more, that's fine. I'm happy to spend more time with you all and do whatever it takes to where you're comfortable and you feel secure in your ability to use this instrument. And I've done this training, for this, and also I worked for a company that did that 360 assessment. It was called Human Factors. And I worked for them. I went out to companies. That's where I got involved with the eBay company. I did it with them, but he also liked my skill level. So he had me train people who would come in to get certified with them. So, all right, so that's basically everything I have to share. I look forward to working with you, and hopefully we can develop a relationship together here, and we can roll this out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Laurel.
Okay, have a good day.